The words shattered the silence more completely than any scream ever could. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered to the empty evening, convinced no one was listening. No one can love a broken woman. The cold wind carried her sorrow through the quiet park, where fading sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and gray. At that moment, a man walking hand in hand with his young daughter stopped just a few steps away. He did not rush toward her. He did not interrupt her pain. Instead, he simply stood there with gentle understanding in his eyes, as though he recognized a loneliness that mirrored his own. Sometimes the people who seem strongest are carrying invisible scars, and sometimes healing begins with nothing more than someone choosing not to walk away. If stories about kindness, hope, and second chances mean something to you, take a quiet moment to reflect on someone who may need compassion today. You're also welcome to share your thoughts with others who enjoy stories like this. Emma had spent years pretending she was fine. Friends admired her strength because they never saw the nights she cried herself to sleep. Coworkers praised her dedication because they never noticed how she avoided looking at family photographs displayed around the office. To the outside world, she was successful, responsible, and independent. Inside, however, she felt like a house whose walls remained standing while every room had collapsed. 5 years earlier, she had escaped a marriage filled with emotional cruelty. The bruises had never been visible, but every cruel word had settled deep inside her heart. She had slowly begun believing every insult that had been repeated to her for years. She believed she was too difficult to love, too damaged to deserve happiness, and too broken for anyone to choose her again. Her apartment reflected that quiet emptiness. Everything was neat, organized, and spotless, yet there was no warmth inside. Every evening followed the same lonely routine. She returned from work, heated a simple dinner, watched television without paying attention, and eventually fell asleep hoping tomorrow would somehow feel different. It never did. Her smile had become something she wore for strangers rather than something she truly felt. Across town, Daniel understood another kind of loneliness. His wife had passed away unexpectedly 3 years earlier, leaving him to raise his 7-year-old daughter Lily alone. Every day was a careful balancing act between work, parenting, and grief. Some mornings he wondered whether he was doing enough. Some nights he sat quietly after Lily had fallen asleep, staring at old photographs and wondering how life could change so completely without asking permission first. Yet despite his heartbreak, he refused to let bitterness become part of his daughter's future. He taught Lily that kindness mattered even when life felt unfair. Their paths crossed in the simplest way imaginable. Emma had started visiting the park after work, because the peaceful surroundings distracted her from the silence waiting inside her apartment. Daniel often brought Lily there to feed ducks and watch the sunset. At first they exchanged only polite smiles. Then Lily began waving enthusiastically every evening. Eventually, Emma found herself smiling before she even realized she was doing it. Lily possessed the wonderful honesty that only children seem capable of carrying. She never cared about expensive clothes, perfect appearances, or carefully rehearsed conversations. She simply noticed people who looked lonely. One afternoon, she ran toward Emma holding a tiny wild flower she had picked near the walking path. She offered it with such innocent joy that Emma almost cried. It had been years since anyone had given her something without expecting anything in return. From that afternoon onward, small conversations became regular encounters. Daniel never asked uncomfortable questions. Emma never explained her past. Instead, they talked about ordinary things: changing seasons, favorite books, funny childhood memories, and Lily's endless imaginations. Slowly, Emma realized she was laughing again. Not the practiced laughter she offered coworkers, but genuine laughter that surprised even herself. Still, healing is rarely a straight path. Every time Emma felt herself growing closer to Daniel and Lily, fear pulled her backward. The voice planted by her former husband returned whenever she looked in the mirror. It reminded her that damaged people eventually disappoint everyone. She convinced herself that Daniel deserved someone stronger, happier, and untouched by heartbreak. Rather than risking another painful ending, she quietly began avoiding the park. Days turned into weeks. Daniel noticed the empty bench where Emma usually sat. Lily asked about her almost every afternoon. Neither understood why someone who had finally begun smiling would suddenly disappear. One rainy evening, Daniel unexpectedly saw Emma leaving the grocery store. She looked exhausted, carrying heavy bags while trying to hide tears behind tired eyes. Instead of pretending not to notice, he simply offered to help carry her groceries home. The short walk became the longest conversation either of them had ever shared. Emma finally spoke about the years of emotional abuse, about losing faith in herself, and about believing she had nothing valuable left to offer anyone. She admitted that she had disappeared because growing close to them frightened her more than being lonely ever had. Daniel listened without interrupting. His silence carried no judgment. When Emma finally finished, she looked away in embarrassment, expecting pity or polite sympathy. Instead, Daniel gently explained that grief had once convinced him he would never smile again. Losing his wife had not made him unworthy of love. Raising Lily alone had not made him incomplete. Pain had changed him, but it had also made him more patient, more compassionate, and more grateful for every small moment of happiness. Then, with quiet tenderness, he stepped closer and gently pulled her into his arms. There were no dramatic promises, no perfect speeches, and no unrealistic declarations. There was only a warm embrace that said what words sometimes cannot. In that single moment, Emma realized nobody was trying to rescue her because she was broken. Someone was simply choosing to stand beside her while she healed. The weeks that followed did not erase the past overnight. Emma still had difficult mornings when old memories returned without warning. Some nights anxiety whispered familiar lies into her heart. But now there were people who reminded her that healing was not measured by perfection. Lily filled quiet afternoons with laughter, insisting that Emma join their picnics, drawing contests, and homemade cookie experiments. Daniel remained steady through every setback, never asking her to become someone else before deserving affection. As seasons changed, Emma slowly transformed. She began decorating her apartment with plants and family photographs. She started volunteering at a community center, helping women rebuild their confidence after difficult relationships. Every encouraging word she shared with others reminded her of truths she was finally beginning to believe herself. She learned that broken things are not worthless. Some are simply waiting for gentle hands willing to hold them with care. One crisp autumn afternoon, the three of them returned to the same park bench where everything had quietly begun. Children laughed nearby while golden leaves drifted across the walking paths. Emma looked at Daniel and Lily chasing one another beneath the trees and felt something she had not experienced in many years: peace. Not because life had become perfect, but because love had entered her life without demanding perfection first. She finally understood that being broken had never made her impossible to love. It had simply made her afraid to believe that real kindness still existed. Daniel had not erased her scars. Lily had not magically healed every wound. Together, however, they had shown her that genuine love does not ask someone to hide their pain. It chooses to stay, even after seeing every crack. If this story touched your heart, consider sharing what message stayed with you the most. Your words may encourage someone else who needs hope today. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with one word that represents hope to you. Your answer might become a light for someone reading through the comments. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Emma realized she was no longer the woman who had whispered that no one could ever love her. She was still healing. She still carried scars, but she also carried laughter, friendship, courage, and a family that had been built not through perfection, but through compassion. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not finding someone who fixes your broken heart. It is finding someone who gently reminds you that your heart was never beyond saving in the first place. And in a world where so many people silently believe they are too damaged to deserve love, perhaps the greatest act of kindness is simply choosing to stay long enough for them to discover they were worthy all along.